All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to me talking about the newest info about D&D. So let's get right into this. First things first. I'm incredibly sick right now. Again, nothing exciting. It's just my conversion disorder deciding to punish me again. So nothing that anyone else can get and nothing that anyone else gave me. It is just my brain being mean. So if I don't see my bubbly self, there's why. So they had the first ever Wizards Presents. Which when I first heard about that, I went, well, wait a minute, didn't they just have... Oh, no, because the last time it was D&D Presents, and this time they added in Magic the Gathering, which I find hilarious. The reason why. Magic the Gathering is the reason Wizards of the Coast still exists. Magic the Gathering is the reason why most friendly local game stores still exist. It is the most popular collectible card game in existence. It makes them crap tons of money. So D&D has always been their kind of niche thing. And then 5th edition came out and Critical Role happened and Hasbro started realizing, ooh, D&D can actually make us money when we treat them right. And now... it almost seems like Magic the Gathering is trying to latch on to D&D instead of D&D trying to latch on to the popularity of Magic the Gathering. And I find that hilarious. So, if anyone is here for Magic the Gathering info, I don't care about what they said. I did not watch any of the Magic the Gathering stuff. I've only watched the D&D stuff. I don't really play Magic the Gathering. I have the digital version of it, the free one. And it's fun, and I understand how the game works. It's just not my game, and the physical version is such a massive money sink that I could not care less about what they're doing with Magic the Gathering. Not saying it's a bad game. I'm just saying it's not mine. So let's talk about what was revealed. The biggest thing that was revealed is D&D's new quote-unquote version, because it's not an edition anymore. 1 D&D. I have feelings about this. First things first. A half edition or an upgraded edition of D&D has been part of Dungeons and Dragons since the original game. You had OD&D, which was its own thing. And then you had first edition D&D that was in two flavors. You had D&D Basic and then Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. When you got the second edition, you still had second edition kind of basic D&D and then Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Third edition got rid of the Advanced title. And just called it 3.5. Fourth edition actually did something kind of unique with their 0.5 of a version. In around 2010, which is about 2 years after fourth edition came out. By the way, still the #1 RPG on the market when this happened. The idea that Pathfinder was this huge thing. Pathfinder, I think, launched around the same time. Or maybe a little bit earlier, but they actually didn't become the quote unquote best-selling RPG of all time until D&D 4th edition stopped publishing materials. They, according to the one thing that we can to track it on, which is a survey that this group does that doesn't actually reflect sales at all. It's just what they they talk to a bunch of different friendly local game stores and find out what they think is the most popular. That is the only way we have to track this particular thing. Q2 of 2011 was when Pathfinder finally started outselling the D&D 4th edition. And D&D was still a strong second. And by 2011, they had basically stopped producing things. They still had, I think, maybe half a dozen books that they put out. Combination of a few adventures and a few like campaign settings and things like that. Nothing really, really big. The vast majority of 4th edition was done. And then 9 months later, they announced and started the 5th edition playtest. So quite literally, Pathfinder only competed with D&D 4th edition for 3 months. Or they were only winning the competition for, or not 3 months, for 3 quarters, 9 months. And the reason they were is that D&D had effectively given up on 4th edition by that point. So anyway, I digress. So 4th edition was kind of unique in the fact that their half version was called the Heroes. You'd have Heroes of the Elemental Chaos or Heroes of Forgotten Kingdoms. All of the things that had heroes in the name were meant to be kind of a simplified version of D&D for 4th edition. And it actually, one of the reasons 5th edition is the way it is because of 4th edition, specifically the hero supplements. They realized after the success and failure of 3rd edition, because 3rd edition was successful, but it was also a massive failure because 3rd edition created a crap ton of competition for them with their SRD and the open game license is what they called it, and it stopped new people getting into D&D pretty hard because of how complicated it was. 4th edition was an attempt to make D&D something that more people could get into and get new faces, and it did that really, really well. It just upset the 3rd edition people. And it was still a complicated game, and they saw that retention numbers weren't fantastic, but the biggest number they saw a huge drop in, starting with 3rd edition, was new players. New people didn't want to have to get an advanced degree to play a game. And so the Heroes series of supplements were designed for new players. They were designed to be more entry-level characters. The characters themselves were significantly easier to build. You actually didn't have to choose your powers at level 1. You just gave them. It was much closer to what we see in like 5th edition, and kind of what you saw in 3rd edition as well, where your class would just give you a set number of abilities, as opposed to 4th edition, where every class had a bunch of different abilities. You got to pick from them to create your version of that class. So that was the Heroes series, and then 5th edition came out, and now we are looking at the 5.5 edition. Now, the name is really stupid, and the reason I say that is because I was a part of the D&D Next playtest. When the D&D Next playtest started, everybody goes, "Oh look, it's D&D 5th edition." And they went, no, this is D&D Next. Is this a new edition? Just D&D Next. No one ever used the D&D Next. It was always 5th edition. It was the 5th edition playtest. It was that. This is a marketing stunt that they're doing to try and say, we're doing something different. And this is not going to be your father's D&D or your grandfather. It's not. It never has been. It's a marketing decision, and it didn't work the first time. I don't know why they're like, oh, let's do this again. Because I will guarantee you what's going to happen is they're going to call it 1 D&D. And everyone else is going to go, oh, you mean D&D 5.5. So this is a marketing move. It's a dumb marketing move. And the reason it is a dumb marketing move is because they tried it before and it failed epically. And it wasn't even just that it started off that people used it and eventually they went, oh, this is just D&D 5th edition. No one ever called it D&D Next, and no one is going to call this 1 D&D. It doesn't roll off the tongue very well. Again, 5.5 doesn't roll off the tongue either really well, but we're used to it. Quite a few people called the Heroes supplements for 4th edition D&D 4.5. So if anyone is freaking out, it's like, oh, we're never going to get another. No, this is D&D 5.5. And this is how D&D has always worked. They always release an updated version of it. That being said, I have not downloaded the playtest materials just yet. I wanted to do my opinion on all the announcements and stuff like that before I actually looked at it. I did make a poll. Someone's already commented on the poll saying that I'm really not going to like the backgrounds. Probably because my last video I talked about I'm really getting sick of them just putting feats into backgrounds instead of creating backgrounds features. So I'm going to guess that all the new backgrounds just give you a feat at first level. And I kind of explained this in my other video when I was talking about how Dark Sun is different, and like taking Dark Sun options for your characters in 4th edition just made them more powerful because Dark Sun was just hard. So if one D&D wants to change backgrounds so that backgrounds are a way to give you some skill proficiencies, some of your more generic starting equipment, and a feat, I'm actually not that upset about that. The reason why is, one, D&D, the way that they're pitching it is that it's going to be a new edition, but it's going to be backwards compatible with 5th edition. It's D&D 5.5. Or, what is probably easier to understand is it is advanced D&D 5th edition. And way back in 2nd edition, when advanced was still a thing, and in 1st edition, when you had basic and advanced, you could choose to play basic, or you could choose to play advanced. And advanced characters were generally going to be more powerful than basic characters. In the same way that feats are an optional rule in D&D 5th edition, you actually don't have to play with feats. You can just do ability score improvements. However, any character that is allowed to use feats compared to a character that is not allowed to use feats is generally going to be more powerful, because feats are a power creep kind of thing. They make you more powerful. So, if one D&D decides that they're going to change how backgrounds work for it, I'm actually okay with that. I would also be okay with the idea of, because I made an entire series talking about how nobody uses background features. I will guarantee Wizards of the Coast is very aware of the fact that no one uses their background features. And by giving them feats, they're almost guaranteeing that players are going to use their background features, because feats are really, really useful. And while, yeah, the background features, depending on which one, they were really useful, they were just really useful in very, very different ways. Most of the background features were role-playing focused, whereas feats primarily are going to be combat focused. There really aren't a whole lot of feats that are primarily, that don't have any combat abilities built into them. So they just look shinier, especially to people that like numbers. Combat in general has lots of numbers. Feats have lots of numbers, so people like that. So I would not be upset if Wizards of the Coast, or I would not be completely opposed to the idea of Wizards of the Coast going back and just re-releasing like the PHB backgrounds, but putting feats in there instead. My issue with the practice in general, and this really comes from me being spoiled from just reading a lot of different RPGs. And I think the Essence 20 system has really opened my eyes just to how poorly the background race and class system in 5th edition was actually designed in the PHB. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the Essence 20 system, you have, instead of race, class, background, you have influences, origin, and role in all of them. And each system is a little bit different. Each character has a little bit different things that their origin and their role and all those things are going to give them. But each one of them is an essential part of the game. And each one of them massively changes how you play your character. And they have mechanical benefits and they have role-playing benefits in every single one of them. So, unlike D&D 5th edition, where after character creation, you can almost forget what race you are. And it will not affect your gameplay almost at all. There are very few things after level 1 that your race is going to do for you as far as the PHB races are concerned. It was one of the reasons I liked Multiverse of Monsters so much, is the new versions of the races in there are just more useful. They actually become something where I'm going to remember all the way to level 20 that I'm playing a Gith, or I'm playing an Eladrin, or whatever it is. And I really, really like that. So if they want to do something, the same thing with backgrounds to make them actually useful, all power to them. My issue comes with the fact that feats are feats and backgrounds are backgrounds. And if you have two different things that basically give you the same thing, that is, and I've said this before, that is complexity for complexity's sake. And in this particular instance, the reason it's becoming that is backgrounds were poorly designed. In the PHB and in the original version, and by that I mean they were poorly designed as far as how they fit into how people actually play. Like I said, I actually like a lot of the background features from the PHB. I think they're really, really interesting and fun. But the way that adventure design was built really kind of dictated how people were going to play. Like, even if you've never played any of the like hardcover adventure books or the D&D Adventures League, basically stuff that was officially made by Wizards of the Coast for people to play, those things do dictate how people play, because Wizards of the Coast is putting this stuff out there going, this is what we expect you to do. And backgrounds really had very little place anywhere in there. The background features themselves were just not the things that were ever talked about or mentioned by anyone at Wizards of the Coast. It just wasn't something that they did. So part of it was they weren't designed super well, but again, I still think they were good in the PHB. And then it turned into, well, people aren't using them, so we're just going to forget them. We're going to try and revamp them. So if they want to turn them into another way to get feats, I guess that's okay. The issue comes in with the fact that, first of all, there's not a ton of feats compared to how many backgrounds there are. So either a lot of backgrounds are going to share the same feat, which I think is going to make them really, really boring and stupid. Or they're going to have to add a bunch more feats into the game, which comes to the issue of, well, either you have to have very, very specific feats that are significantly less useful overall, or you have to start doing just dumb, feat stacking and all that, feat trees and stuff like that. That was one of the reasons that 3rd edition was so complicated. It was one of the reasons that 4th edition was so complicated. This is a mistake that they just don't seem to be willing to learn from. Because every time they create a new edition, it's like, well, maybe we can get feat stacking to work this time. No, it's not going to work. It makes it overly complicated. And either your base, the thing at the feat trees, either the base one is going to be so useful that there's no reason to pick the other ones, or the base one's going to be useless without the other ones, and therefore choosing one feat at like 4th level also chooses what feat you're going to choose at 8th level and at 12th level. And because you get so few feats that you get to choose in 5th edition D&D, being forced to waste 2 feats and wait 4 levels before you actually get the features that you want isn't fun. Again, I haven't read the playtest document yet. I'm going to. But if that's what they're doing, is they're basically turning backgrounds into a way to get you extra feats right at level 1, I'm not 100% against that, my big issue is new backgrounds right now are significantly more powerful than old backgrounds. So you are effectively punishing anyone that wants to use the feats from the PHB, because they're just always going to be worse than the feats that are the backgrounds. I mean, the backgrounds that are showing up now. If one D&D decides to just make all backgrounds that way, I'm actually more okay with that than what they've been doing right now. Because again, good game design gives you choices. Bad game design gives you right answers. And right now, new backgrounds are the right answer when you're building your character. They're always better than the old ones. And that's bad game design to me. So yeah, the idea of the playtest in general, again, I did the D&D Next playtest. It was a resounding success. The reason 5th edition is as solid as it is, and I'm not saying it's a perfect system, but it is by far one of the best designed systems on the market currently, and one of the best designed tabletop RPGs ever created. And one of the big reasons why is they took 2 years of playtesting to build it. And that was public playtesting. They started writing D&D Next right around the time that Pathfinder started taking over. That's a little before that is when they started on D&D Next, and so they gave up on 4th edition. Again, that's why Pathfinder had its brief moment in the sun for like a year and a half. Yeah. 5th edition is as good as it is because they took the time to not only work on it and learn from their mistakes, most of them, but then they opened it up to players and they actually saw how people played. And that was a huge, huge, huge thing. So the fact that they're doing this for D&D 5.5, I think is a good idea. I'm a little bit worried about the fact that it launches in a year. Or no, it launches in a year and a half, effectively. Or a little under. It launches in 2024. We are more than halfway through 2022. We're almost into Q4. We're basically looking at maybe 9 months of playtesting where they can actually change things, and then maybe another 6 months of polish style playtesting, which is very, 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 very different from what the original D&D Next playtest was, where by far the first year-ish, easily the first year, probably close to the first year and a half, they were making massive changes to the D&D Next playtest every time they released a new. So it's a supplement based on feedback, and I just don't think, with how much work has already been put into it, I just don't think this is going to be as... I don't think they've given it enough time for this to be as influential as the original playtest. Now, again, this is not a brand new system. This is a 0.5, so perhaps they're not going to need as much playtesting time because the real tough stuff has already been figured out. And they're basically just going to need playtesting for kind of the newer ideas that they put in. So I think the playtest for 1D&D, I think, is a good idea. I'm slightly worried about just the length of it. It doesn't seem like they're giving it enough time. But again, they launched it today. So it's not like, oh, the playtest starts in December or something. No, they launched it today. So that's still going to give a solid year before we start kind of seeing whispers of launch dates. A lot of people don't realize by the time you are given a publish date for a product, the vast majority of the product is already completed. For a D&D book, like a supplement, the vast majority of everything is in there, and that lasts 3 to 6 months between announcement and it actually coming out is layouts, proofreading, and printing physical copies. Like, that's all that they do for the last, like, 3 to 6 months of a product coming out. So by the time you hear about it, it's done. There's no changes that are happening to it. So when they actually give a firm launch date for one D&D, which again is D&D 5.55, at that point, the feedback that you're giving is probably not going to be reflected in the book at all. More likely than not, they will use it for future supplements and things like that. Because Wizards of the Coast has been very, very good at taking feedback from their fans really, really well. And using a lot of it. Not all of it. Again, they still have those mistakes that they just refuse to learn from. But overall, the playtest I think is a good step. I'm excited just to see what it is. I am planning on basically doing D&D deep dives every time a new playtest comes out. It's not going to be like my character breakdowns where I go through every single thing, but it is going to be, okay, so these are the things that they introduced. And this is what it looks like. These are maybe a few of the mechanics I think are cool. These are some of the mechanics I'm not particularly fond of. These are some of the problems I'm seeing. These are some of the nice things that I'm seeing. Stuff like that. A lot of that will depend on if there's any sort of NDA built into the playtest. The original playtest, they actually did have a pretty substantial NDA that was mostly toothless. What I mean by that is, yes, you had to sign this NDA, and that meant if you did certain things, like you weren't allowed to talk about the playtest materials, I think, anywhere other than official places that they allowed it. There was absolutely no way for them to actually enforce that rule. The amount of money it would take to sue someone, or even to send out things like DMCA takedown notices, where they go, well, that's our copywritten material, you have to take it down. The amount of work it would take was never going to be worth what it would be. So yes, there was an NDA for it. It was mostly toothless, and it was basically there for them to cover their asses. I have no idea if there's an NDA built into this playtest. I would assume there has to be something, but there's no NDAs built into Unearthed Arcana. So it's very possible they just won't NDA this at all. And to be perfectly honest, I think that's a better move. The NDA itself made D&D Next feel a little bit more predatory than it needed to be. And again, D&D Next was a success. It turned into 5th edition. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you guys are interested in the playtest materials at all. Like I said, I'm probably going to bare minimum, I'm going to have at least every time a new playtest material thing comes out, I will talk about it. If you guys want me to go more in depth with that, let me know in the comments down below. Then there was a bunch of MTG stuff, and then D&D: The Legend of Drizzt. I've read quite a few of the books, Drizzt books. I actually was never able to get through the Crystal Shard, but the prequel series to the Crystal Shard that basically had Drizzt's early life and him coming out of the Underdark and meeting the companions of the Hall and stuff like that before he went to Icewind Dale. I actually did read that. And R.A. Salvatore is a fantastic author. So the whole Legend of Drizzt thing, the chapter features on here, because I was watching it on my phone, because again, I was very sick and I couldn't get out of my bed. The chapter features kind of cut off the beginning of it, but basically it just sounds like they're re-releasing. They're doing a bunch of new covers for all of R.A. Salvatore's Drizzt books, and it seems like they're re-releasing them and reprinting them and stuff like that. All of that is good stuff. I like it. I'd like to see more D&D books coming out. Back when 5th edition launched, there was this thing called the Second Sundering, which what it was I think it was like it was either 5 or 6 books, each written by a different author. You had R.A. Salvatore, you had, what was his name? Ed Greenwood wrote one of them. Who else was, I think Troy Denning might have written one of them. Anyway, it was a huge thing, and it was really, really exciting. Like, I went to Gen Con the year that they announced it, and it was so cool. They took over the kind of top ballroom of a hotel and turned it into Baldur's Gate, and they turned it into this huge event, and they had this massive sword, and R.A. Salvatore cut a cake that had drizzed a picture on it with this massive sword. It was super cool. So I would like to see them doing that again. I would like to see a huge book initiative where they have a bunch of different authors that are all writing pieces of the same story, as opposed to, well, R.A. Salvatore's writing Drizzt stuff, and Ed Greenwood's writing stuff about Elminster, and this person's writing this. I really loved that book series, and just how much fun it was. Yeah, if they're going to do more stuff like that, I'm all for it. Next thing they had was stuff about Spelljammers. I did a review. I'm doing reviews on Spelljammers. I'll get another one. I don't know if I'm getting it out today. Again, very sick. I would like to have it out by tomorrow. It may come out over the weekend. Again, very sick. But overall, I'm liking Spelljammer. The Dragonlance announcements. We've known Dragonlance was coming for something like 2 years now. So no one was surprised about Dragonlance. The thing that did become kind of surprising is the digital physical bundles, which I think are interesting. And the reason I say interesting is I like the fact that you can buy digital and physical together. I think that's really, really cool. That might mean I start buying physical books. My issue comes in with the fact, like, my Essence 20 books, I get free PDFs of those. Anytime I pre-order the physical books, every single one of the physical books, I have gotten a PDF for free. The physical digital bundles that I'm seeing are more expensive than the physical versions. They are more expensive than the digital versions. So you're paying a premium. And most of my books, I either bought in a game store to support the game store back when I could go out, or nowadays I buy most of my books on Amazon, where I don't pay for shipping. And the reason being, shipping for the new Dragonlance bundle, just the digital PDF bundle, not the whole one that gives you the DM screen and all the other cool stuff. It's $60 for that, which is pretty close to what you're paying for most D&D books. Most physical books right now are retailing at about $50 is what the MSRP for most of their books that come out is. So $10 more to get a free PDF, that I'm actually fine with. And it's actually remarkably difficult to find places that sell most of these books at MSRP. Most places like Amazon, within a lot of times before the book launches, they will have like a $5 or $10 discount on the book. And I get free shipping through Amazon because I'm a Prime member. Shipping on just this book, without all the other stuff, is, I think it's $12.99. So $13. We are talking about, what is that? Close to, that is almost 20% of the cost of the book itself. You are having to pay in additional shipping. So a $60 book turns into almost a $75 book. And that, to me, is not cool. Because D&D is already a somewhat expensive of a hobby. It's not as expensive as Magic the Gathering, and it never will be. But it's still kind of an expensive hobby. And again, I'm on disability. I have an extremely limited budget. And a lot of times I have to, like, eat fewer meals in a month if a bill comes up and I need to get a book for the channel or things like that. Like, I have to ration out my funds every month. And so as much as, you know, an extra 13, 14 bucks doesn't sound like a lot, it is. And when you combine, if you combine that to like every single book coming out now is going to be, in order to get the bundle, which is going to give you the best bang for your buck, you're going to have to spend significantly more because of the shipping thing. That to me is a pretty big issue, especially since most places you can get free shipping for orders on like Amazon. Most of your free shipping is $35 or more. Most other places are $50 or more. The only places I've ever seen that charge a higher amount for shipping are generally things where the items themselves tend to be like furniture. You generally have to order like $100 or more for free shipping, or $150 for free shipping. For free shipping from D&D, you need to spend over $100. Which, if you get the whole kit and caboodle with the GM screen and all the other cool stuff, that's $160, and it comes with a PDF as well, or it comes with a digital version, not a PDF, but a copy on D&D Beyond. That will get you free shipping, but that's also $160. It's more than double the price of the base book with shipping. So that is an extremely expensive of option that I think looks cool. But I don't see me ever being able to afford something like that. Not only do I not make money, I'm not allowed to make money because Social Security is nuts. And Social Security disability is even more nuts. So yeah, finding ways to offset the cost of these books. I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way. I like the fact that they're doing this bundle thing now. And I think all of us knew it was coming. And all of us knew that there was going to be some kind of cost. I was not expecting $13 shipping. Because again, I buy D&D books and I know how much the shipping costs if I was to pay for it. Generally, it's like $3 to $5 for a single book. Like I don't understand why shipping would be $13 for a book. It feels like they're hiking up the prices there. To either offset profit margins from the fact that they're not getting people that are buying both the physical and the digital version, or it's something else. It's weirdly expensive shipping. So yeah, but overall, like I said, Dragonlance. It's Dragonlance. It's a classic D&D setting. I have my own issues with the setting itself. Not with the setting itself, but with people that really like the setting, specifically the Kender. The Kender are basically halflings in the Dragonlance version of halfling are called the Kender. And they have this thing where they were trying to create a race of thieves, effectively, that were not evil, that were not like constantly depriving and were not selfish. And so the idea that they came is Kender, as a society, do not understand the idea of ownership, just in general. Their society, everything, nobody owns anything in their society. So if you see, if you see a sword leading up against a wall, you can go over and you can just pick it up and take it with you if it's going to be useful for you. And so Kender are kind of kleptomaniacs, but they don't see it that way. They just go, you know what, that could be really useful. I should probably bring it with me. In the same way that if you were, playing a computer RPG, you might loot every single body and stuff like that. It's like, well, this might be useful, and they don't need it anymore. It's the kind of same thing. What I've seen in practice, though, is people that really like the Kender in general tend to be problem players that want to have an excuse to be selfish and derail games, and then be able to say, well, I'm sorry, that's how my character works. That's just how Kenders work. They do not understand the idea of a society that doesn't understand possession, because there isn't a society on Earth that doesn't understand possession. They don't exist. Yes, there are more kind of socialist societies where there's an idea of group ownership, but that's not what the Kender are. There is no idea of ownership. There is no possession. And so I would see people playing Kender who would steal literally everything and just go, well, I'm a Kender. That's what we do. And then anytime there's a situation where they would be forced to share, or there'd be a situation where someone would need something that they had. Well, no, this is mine. It doesn't work that way. Kenders don't understand possession. That's why they steal stuff. Because they don't understand that it's wrong, because possession isn't a thing for them. So if you are walking down the street and a Kender sees somebody that's like, hey, do you have some coins? You're like, you know, I'm not buying anything right now. Here's all my money. There is no possession. And the only way I've ever seen somebody play a Kender is no one else is allowed to own anything except me. I'm allowed to own everything. And that is such a toxic trait. Again, it's not that I have a problem with the Kender. I think the idea is really, really interesting. And if you see them in books and things like that, they're much, much better portrayed. But I've never met someone that wants to play a Kender, that wants to play a Kender for any reason other than I want to steal everything and never get in trouble for it. And that is not fun for anyone. So other than that, you know, Dragonlance is cool. The next thing they talked about, D&D in Japan. I had no idea D&D wasn't in Japan. The RPG market in general, the Japanese market is actually really, really big. And the largest player base in Japan is actually Call of Cthulhu. And I never understood why until I'm starting to think nobody ever localized D&D in Japan. Or even if they did localize it, they never really put an effort there. Whereas I believe Call of Cthulhu has really developed the market really well, and they publish all their stuff in Japanese and other Asian languages and other things like that generally wouldn't get access to this stuff, because RPGs in general are a Western thing. Specifically, they're an American thing. They started in Wisconsin, in Lake Geneva. So they are very, very much a Western society style kind of thing. So the fact that they're now kind of marketing to Japan, I think is kind of cool. I actually really don't care as much that Wizards is marketing to them as much as I'm really interested in seeing what Japanese creators create for D&D. Because, again, Wizards of the Coast, they're wonderful people. I've met quite a few of them. They are really, really lovely people. Chris Perkins, one of the nicest men in the world. He really is just an incredibly kind-hearted soul, and he's very, very welcoming. I got to meet him at Gen Con, and within a few minutes, we were just talking. I said, hey, Acquisitions Incorporated is the reason I started playing D&D. I'm such a huge fan. I said, I wrote my own kind of Acquisitions Incorporated adventure. Would you mind signing it for me? I would really, really appreciate if I could get your signature. He's like, oh, I'd be happy to. And so he signed it. I have it in a box somewhere, I hope. I hope they didn't throw it away. I also have Scott Kurtz's signature on there, and I want to try and get the original Acquisitions Incorporated people. So I need Jerry Holkins and Mike Rulick. And at one point I wanted Will Wheaton, and that's a whole other thing. But Pat Rothfuss might be a lot of fun because VR has been a huge part of it. Really, anyone that's been in part of Acquisitions Incorporated, I'd love to get him to sign it. But anyway, as much as the Wizards of the Coast people are really, really nice, they're all Americans that grew up watching the same stuff and playing the same stuff. So a lot of the stuff that they put out is the same. I would love to see what Japanese D&D looks like. I would love to see what Japanese D&D character options are. And when I say that, I don't mean Japanese-inspired things. Because, again, the monk is significantly more inspired by Chinese folklore than it is Japanese. The Kensei has a fair amount of Japanese influence into it, and the samurai has a lot of Japanese influence in it. And neither of them ever have felt like they're a good representation of Japanese culture or anything like that, or Japanese ideas. So when I say Japanese character options, I'm talking about character options that are designed by a Japanese audience. because I'm interested to see how they view the game differently than we do, and I think we could come up with they could come up with some really, really cool things. So I'm interested in that. As far as the
And now for the
oh, calm down. That's not what I wanted. Just give me the whole thing. That's not what I want, you dumb. Sorry, I'm trying to see if I can get... There it is. That's all I needed. So they did do an announcement of the rest of the things that they're going to be launching in 2023. So this is all stuff that predates... and this is effectively going to be the last of the published material for D&D 5th edition. Everything else will be published for D&D 5.5. Or 1 D&D, which again is a massively dumb name. You have Keys from the Golden Vault, which is another update thing. As much as it seems like they're kind of beating a dead horse with this stuff where they just keep updating old stuff, like there are really, really, really good adventures that are out of print now that don't really work in 5th edition very well, that were poorly written back then because they were written by amateurs effectively. Almost every time they've updated something to 5th edition, it's turned out really good. So I'm interested to see what Keys to the Golden Vault is going to be. Another anthology kind of thing. Bigby presents Glory of the Giants. It's effectively going to be Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, except for giants. And I loved Treasury of Dragons. However, they tried doing giant-themed stuff with the 5th season of the Adventures, Storm King's Thunder. They tried to introduce like runic magic and stuff like that, and it just didn't turn out that well. The Rune Knight's Fighter is a really bad class, or subclass. And so I would really, really like to see, specifically, I like rune magic. I think rune magic in general is really interesting. I'm currently building a new class that uses a rune style system that I think is really, really cool. So I'm all for that. They've kind of screwed it up before, so I'm a little bit hesitant about it. The Fendelver Campaign, I think is interesting. I have not played Lost Minds of Fendelver completely. I've played like 1 or 2 sessions of it, just because I was at a game store that a friend was running an adventure, and I just sat down and said, okay, I'll play. So they had enough people to play. And that's the only time I've ever played Fendelver. My understanding is it's a fairly decent intro adventure. It's not the greatest intro adventure. So retooling it into an entire campaign, I think, could be a really, really good thing. And I'm a big fan of campaigns in general. I'd be interested to see. I'm going to assume Fendelver is going to be again a 1 to 12 campaign because they really don't do high level content anymore. But I think it would be kind of apropos for them to take the Fendelver campaign and actually extend it to a full level 20 Kiki campaign. I just think that'd be interesting. Again, most people don't play high level D&D, but I'd love some more high level options. I really, really, it's high level D&D is a lot of fun. It's just a lot of work to run, and that's the issue that most GMs have with it. Is it takes a lot of work to build interesting stuff in high level D&D. So, the Book of Many Things. The Book of Many Things, it gets me really excited. I don't know where they are, but I do have a deck of Many Things. It is one of my prized possessions. It came in. I wonder if I just put it back in here. I'm gonna look. This is the last product that was launched for 4th edition, and it came with a deck of Many Things. And I love my deck of Many Things. It is a gorgeous deck of Many Things. And I'm just going to check to see if I put it back in here. I have not kept it in this box since I got it. No, just dungeon tiles and things like that, which is fine. I mean, but look at how gorgeous this is, and there's the monster stat blocks. Like these, this is a good supplement, folks. This is a very good supplement. Madness at Gardmore Abbey is one of my favorites. Anyways, so I love the deck of many things. It actually, unbeknownst to my players, it actually has a place in one of the campaigns I'm currently running right now. My players have no idea it's there, but it is. And I really, really enjoy the deck of many things. So having a book devoted to the deck of many things, first things first, I hope that means that they are printing a new deck of many things, because I will buy the physical and the digital version of the Book of Many Things separately if it means that I can get a new deck of many things that looks really pretty. Because again, I love the deck of many things, and so I'm excited about that. And then Planescape, again, Planescape is another one that I'm not particularly shocked is coming. The thing that I am surprised about, and I mentioned this in my review of the first book from Spelljammer, I was expecting an announcement about Dark Sun, because again, they have added some the Sirlons. I don't think they originated in Dark Sun, but they played a big part in Dark Sun. The Saurians did originate in Dark Sun. The Thri-Kreen originated in Dark Sun. Psionic abilities originated in Dark Sun. There have been all this stuff that has been, kind of hinting that Dark Sun is there. And again, I can neither confirm nor deny that I know some people, or I don't know some people that do playtesting, and they've seen it. But that is pure speculation that I can neither confirm nor deny. Yeah, so I was a little bit upset. However, if one D&D is what I think it is, then I think Dark Sun probably will fit better in one D&D than it will in D&D 5th edition. Just because, again, Dark Sun is a bitch. It is such a just overwhelmingly oppressive campaign setting. And it's really hard, and you don't play first level characters in it. So if Dark Sun turns into the first thing that they release for one D&D, I'm not going to be upset. But if they do not update Dark Sun to 5th edition, I'm going to be, whether it's 5th edition or whether it's one D&D, I'm going to be very upset. Because they have almost everything they need to make a Dark Sun campaign setting. Almost everything is there. And it just feels like they're leading up to it. So, yeah. And then trying to think. I think, yeah, that was everything for D&D. So overall, the D&D aspects of Wizards Presents. I guess one thing I didn't mention, in the very beginning of the D&D things, they start talking about the kind of inclusivity, and the phrase that I hear constantly is like, well, I didn't know that people like me could be adventurers, or could be this, or could be that, because I never saw people that looked like me in any of the artwork or the things like that. Apparently, this is a really, really common experience, and I guess it's kind of true for me too, because in addition to being obese and overweight, I am also a very large person in general. I have a very wide frame, so even when I am in good shape, which I have been in good shape before, I am just very big. And that is my entire family. We have big Swedish bones, is what my mother used to say. We have big Swedish bones. And I have very broad shoulders. I have very thick bones. And everything about me is big. And I remember watching Power Rangers Hyperforce. when it came out, and one of the characters is played by Paul Schreier, who was who is the actor that played Bulk in the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Bulk and Skull were the two bullies that used to pick on the Power Rangers, and they started off as kind of antagonists. And they very quickly switched to more comic relief. And as the seasons went on, they actually became characters that you could relate to, and you actually liked them. They were no longer the bad guys; they were just the silly guys. The actor Paul is a big guy. He's a big guy like me, and he got to play the Yellow Ranger on Power Rangers Hyper Force. And they had official art of them because it was a tabletop RPG, so they didn't get suits or anything like that. But they did have official artwork which showed their suits and things like that. And Jack was Paul's character, and Jack was a big guy. And Jack had a wide frame. And again, you don't really have fat heroes. In media, just in general. Yes, you can have people like Sammo Hung or like Chris Farley played the hero card. Sammo Hung is kind of his own thing because he comes from a completely different culture. But if you look at quote unquote fat heroes in movies and television and things like that, they're heroes because because the world just shits on them all the time, and they wade through it and get out of it. And a lot of times the only way that they can do that is they have to be really funny. And so fat funny guy is the only real hero you're going to see. And especially if you start looking at more kind of action heroes and things like that, you don't really have fat heroes, you have fat villains. Fat people are always, like, the bad guys are allowed to be fat. The good guys aren't allowed to be fat unless they're funny. And Jack wasn't. Jack could be funny, but that was not his defining character trait. Jack was, if I remember correctly, Jack was law enforcement. He was a very by-the-books kind of guy. He was kind of the, not the stick in the mud, but he was kind of the anchor for the team, where he would go, you know, this is how we do this, and this is this, and he was kind of a mentor figure for a lot of teams because he was older than most of the other Rangers as well, and he wasn't a joke, and he was a fat superhero, and that blew my mind because I'd never seen it before. So when I hear this phrase, I understand it to a point, because it did make me feel a lot better to see someone, even if it was just artwork, that looked like me, that also got to be a hero and got to be an action hero. But that never stopped me from envisioning myself as a hero. Like, I started taking, to be perfectly honest, the first martial arts lessons I started martial arts when I was 6 years old. I didn't really get heavy into it until I was around 11 or 12. But Power Rangers was a big part of that. And so yeah, fat people weren't allowed to be superheroes and things like that, and that meant I wasn't allowed to be, but that didn't stop me. And when I started realizing that I didn't want to be an action hero, I started looking at other things, other ways that I could be a kind of hero. Being a manager that actually cares about their employees was a big deal to me. Supporting people that couldn't help themselves or were put in situations where they they were in difficult situations. Again, I saw it a lot in retail, where you have a lot of people that work retail because they have nowhere else that they can go. And then people in power a lot of times will use that to just treat them very, very poorly. Because it's like, well, to be blunt, retail associates, like your regular hourly associates, I can literally pick anyone off the street and teach them how to do what 90% of retail associates do. And a lot of times you pick someone up off the street and teach them to do it, they actually work better than a lot of the retail associates that I had to deal with, who had just become complacent. And that fact I have seen used a lot to kind of hold over their heads is like, listen, if you don't want to do this thing that you shouldn't have to do, but I'm going to force you to do it anyways because you literally have nowhere else to go and I can afford to lose you, was really disheartening. And so I started shifting more towards being that kind of a hero, where I would get into leadership positions and I would ensure that I was treating the employees the way that they deserve to be treated. Not like deserve to be treated as I treated them as good or as bad as they treated me. No, I treated them the way that any human being deserves to be treated, with dignity, with respect. A common line I would tell the people is like, listen, we don't pay you enough for this to impact your life in a negative way. We really don't. And we're never going to. They don't pay me enough and I get paid more than you. They don't pay my boss enough. There isn't an amount of money where your job is worth more than your sanity or that. So don't freak out about your job. You know, I tell employees this all the time. It's like, yeah, don't worry if, someone steals from us. Don't run outside or try to stop them or anything. We do not pay you enough to put your body in danger. So don't do it. They don't pay me enough. So just don't do it. So anyway, going back to the whole D&D thing, with the whole inclusivity thing, I get that argument, but it has started to ring kind of hollow to me because I keep hearing it constantly. It's like, well, we've never seen, and they keep saying it over and over again and forgetting that those barriers have already been taken down previously, and it was a big deal back then. And they try and kind of minimize successes from previous generations and go, well, no, we're the first ones to actually do this because last time it wasn't real. So that's starting to ring hollow with me. And again, after Journey to the Radiant Citadel, which is a great idea that was just horribly implemented, I'm not particularly fond of the idea of Wizards of the Coast championing the idea of inclusivity and diversity and things like that, because thus far, every time they've tried to do it, it has turned out very poorly. So yeah, not particularly fond of that aspect. Not because I don't think it should be a thing. No, I think it's absolutely something that should be happening more and more and more. Diverse. We have studies and tons of studies that show diversity tends to be good from a creative perspective. Diversity tends to be good from an economic perspective, from a business perspective. Diversity of opinions, diversity of thoughts, all of those things. We've studied it for decades and decades and decades. And all of it has shown that the more ideas are brought to the table, the better the ideas that come out of that group are. The issue is diversity now has stopped being diversity ideas, and diversity has entirely become a visual thing. And they've done studies on that too. And if you just get a bunch of different people from different races that all have the exact same background and the exact same beliefs and things like that, doesn't do anything. It's absolutely pointless. And it's just showboating. And a lot of people will use the visual aspects of it to justify homogenizing whatever it is that they're doing. It's like, well, yes, well, we have all these different people that look different, but they all think the exact same way, and they all do the exact same thing, and they all come from the exact same background. So as much as, yes, we're diverse, we're still putting out the same nonsense malarkey that we already have. We've just painted it different. And so that's what I see as the big issue with most of the diversity campaigns that I've seen from Wizards of the Coast have been, well, look, they look different. Yeah, but you're just still doing the same bullshit where you steal from cultures and then pretend that the cultures don't exist. So are you really championing diversity, or are you more championing tokenism? Anyway, so those are my opinions on this whole thing. Like I said, I'm gonna read the playtest. I'm going to give my thoughts on the first bit of playtest materials, whether I like it or I don't like it. There's going to be a video on it. I don't know how detailed it's going to be. I like to talk a lot, if you guys hadn't figured out. Mostly because I don't speak to anyone. I live in a basement by myself. So this is the only time I speak. Yeah, and then I'm still going to be doing in-depth reviews of the other two books in Spelljammer. It just may take a couple extra days to get all three of them out because, again, very, very sick. Anyway, that is all for me today. I'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.